Thank you for joining today. This is the 6th in our series of A Course in Miracles Made Easy lessons. And today we have one of my favorite topics called At Your Hand I Live. And I'll explain to you what that's all about in just a moment. But for now, I invite you to take a moment to hold with prayer and vision with me. So if you would, just please close your eyes right where you are and take a deep breath. We recognize that each person has been drawn here by Spirit, and that there is a lesson and a blessing and a service to each of you. So my prayer, my intention is that each person who is listening and watching, either live or to the archive, receives some gift that helps you come closer to inner peace, that helps you to release fear or pain in any way, and gives you more of a sense of what A Course in Miracles calls the peace of God. And so we turn our meeting over to higher power, over to Holy Spirit. We trust that I will be guided and you will be guided, and that something happens in your heart and in your mind that makes your life more beautiful, easier, freer, and more effective in every way. And if you care to join me in saying, and so it is, and so it is. Okay, so we're going to dive right in, and we begin by recognizing that there are only two views of the world, basically. One is based on fear and one is based on love. The ego's world is based on fear and separation. The spirit's world, love's world, is based on healing, connection, oneness, compassion, and pure love. And so at any given moment, we are looking at the world through one set of eyes or the other. The Course in Miracles tells us there is no overlap. So when something like illness comes up, and we're not talking just about physical illness, it could be psychological pain or marital strife or financial stress, all forms of illness, because they all represent lack. So we're going to take two different views now and show you why one works and the other doesn't. So the ego uses illness, when it sees it, to manufacture and reinforce guilt. And guilt is the tool of the ego, because it kind of always kind of gets in there and going to twist you. It's like when you're looking through eyes of guilt, everything is guilty. Other people are guilty, you're guilty, God is guilty, and everything is at fault because you're looking through dark glasses that strain everything and filter everything and make everything look faulty. And so when illness comes up, then the ego jumps right in and says, okay, here's a chance to make somebody guilty. I don't care who it is. It could be me, it could be the government, it could be religion, it could be Jesus, it could be your husband or wife, it could be anybody. But the ego equates illness with guilt, and therefore sin and punishment get dragged in. You must be ill because you're guilty, you're sinful, and now you require punishment. That is the whole paradigm of the ego. And as we said last month, the ego sees sin and punishment, and the spirit sees error and correction. Those are two different things. On the other hand, the Holy Spirit sees illness as a call for love. And so if somebody's hurting in any way, whether it's physically ill or emotionally ill or mentally ill, immediately Holy Spirit jumps in and says, okay, this person obviously needs love. Big difference, isn't there? So a teacher once told me, if somebody came to you and they had a gaping wound in their side, they were bleeding, what would you do? Well, you take them to the hospital or help them somehow. Well, if somebody comes to you with anger or attack or upset, that's their gaping wound. It's a psychological wound. So if somebody was in great distress and pain, and even if they were yelling at you or calling you names or threatening you, you would reinterpret that as a call for love. The bigger their upset, the bigger their call for love. Now, it's easier said than done, isn't it? Because the ego wants to react and jump in and go tit for tat. But if we can just have the presence of mind to say, wow, this person must be really hurting, then it's a whole different story, isn't it? So I want to refer you to famous literary character, Miss Havisham. Miss Havisham is a character in Charles Dickens' immortal novel, Great Expectations. Now, the protagonist, Pip, a young boy, goes to see Miss Havisham for the first time, and he is greeted by an elderly spinster who Dickens describes as a cross between a waxwork and a skeleton. Pretty gnarly, huh? And she's a little more than skin and bones. And the interesting thing about Miss Havisham, as Pip meets her, is that she's wearing an old, tattered, yellowed wedding gown. And on her table, on her dining room table, she has very old dishes and rotting cake, and obviously there was a banquet that was supposed to happen that didn't. Well, the story goes that many years ago, Miss Havisham was jilted at the altar. Her betrothed did not show up, and she was terribly embarrassed, and she was terribly angry. So for the rest of her life, we'll say 40 or 50 years later, she's walking around in this wedding gown that never got used, and amidst this wedding feast that never got eaten. And so Course in Miracles describes this, not in its own words, but in other words, as treasured wounds. That's a very key phrase in our learning. Treasured wounds. Treasured wounds, which means you're using your wound as something other than a call for love and healing. And the motto of the ego, I'm trying to find it here, but I guess I didn't write it down, is, behold me, brother, at your hand I die. This is really crucial, really, really crucial. Please remember that. Behold me, brother, at your hand I die. And the Course goes on to talk about this in more detail. And it's kind of a long passage, but it's really important. So I'll read the whole thing. A sick and suffering you, but represents your brother's guilt. This is so crucial to how A Course in Miracles intends to create healing. We'll come around to how to reverse this in a moment. The witness that you send, lest he forget the injuries he gave, from which you swear he never will escape. Your wounds say, behold me, brother, at your hand I die. This is so crucial. Now it's dramatic, it's intense, but of course says we must understand this if we're ever to get over guilt, ours and others. For sickness is the witness to his guilt, and death would prove his errors. must be sins. So once again, the Course is distinguishing between an error, which simply calls for correction, and a sin, which calls for punishment. And the Course says we've never sinned. There is no such thing as a sin in the sense that you could really separate yourself from God or deserve punishment. We make lots of errors, which call for correction. But a sin and an error are entirely different things. Sickness, the Course goes on to say, is but a little death, a form of vengeance, not yet total. Now, the Course in Miracles is pretty intense. This is what actually turns a lot of people off to it, because it's in your face. It really confronts us with the foundations of how our belief system works, but that foundation actually causes us nothing but pain and sorrow and suffering. So the Course wants to reach in like surgery and get at that defective organ. Now, it's not a great analogy because we want to heal an organ, but it wants to get at the defective part of us so it can remove it and transform it so we can start a new life. This is why people feel like they've been born again if they do A Course in Miracles. Not that you're born again Christian, but you're born again miracle doer. Okay, I want to refer you to a movie that Dee and I saw a while back. It's called Dream Lovers. I don't have an illustration for it, but there's a very stark image I want to share with you. It's a Chinese movie. It's very well done. I highly recommend it. You can look it up on IMDb at that address if you like. There's lots of movies with that title, so be careful. You find the Chinese one from 1986. So the story goes that there's a guy named Song Yu, and he has a girlfriend. And Song Yu is out somewhere at a museum, I believe, one day, and he meets a woman whom he believes is his true soulmate. And he starts having mystical visions of them being together in a past life during a Chinese dynasty. And this, quote, knowing gets very, very intense. And he's quite sure that this person is a soulmate rather than his girlfriend. And so he leaves his girlfriend and he moves in with his, so to speak, soulmate. Well, a few scenes later, we hear a knock at Sung Yu's door. And there is his girlfriend in a white robe, and she has slit her wrists, and blood is dripping down onto this white robe. It's a very dramatic scene. And she yells out, "Song Yu!" And she drops to her death. Now, it's kind of a gnarly scene, but I cite it because it's very symbolic. That what she had to do to make Sung Yu guilty was to show him, it's almost like the Christ crucifixion with her arms out, with her wrist bleeding, to show him that he killed her. And now that she's shown him he killed her and he is guilty, then she dies. Behold me, brother, at your hand I die. Okay, so that's the hardest part of this lesson. We'll go on to some easier stuff, but it's dramatic and it's worth watching because of the symbolism. Okay, so the Course says that you don't have to necessarily die in front of your brother's eyes, but we do attribute sickness and illness to other people and define them as the cause. This is where the Course is really, really unique, because it gets very graphic and very specific in terms of how we use illness. And the Course actually says, in no uncertain terms, that every illness you have, down to the smallest sigh, is an attempt to make someone else guilty. They could even be making yourself guilty, but it's an attempt to make someone guilty. So let us look at some of the ways, some of the expressions that have crept into our vernacular that indicate how someone else is the source of our pain. So I did a lot of thinking on this because I've heard them and said them. So, you make me sick. Think about if you've ever said this or heard this said to you. Parent says to a child, you'll be the death of me. And now a boy whose father said that to him, and then a few months later, the father died of a heart attack. And the kid felt guilty for many years, had to go into therapy. My kid is the pain in the neck. So what we're doing here is we're taking physical symptoms and we're showing how we use them to lay guilt on someone else, to make them wrong. Behold me, brother, at your hand I die. My boss is a pain in the butt. My ex-wife is a ball buster. This project is a real headache. I can't stomach that coworker. My boyfriend broke my heart. Now you're saying, well, these are just ideas, just phrases we casually use. But no, how did these ideas get into our vernacular? They didn't come out of nowhere. There is a relationship between who you believe hurt you and the physical symptoms that are demonstrating how you hurt. My mother's demands are suffocating me. My kid's college education cost me an arm and a leg. The other team kicked our ass. There's more. The economy is crippling me. I'm sweating out this exam. That movie is a real tearjerker. I'm tired of your lies. My statistics professor puts me to sleep. You understand? In every situation, someone out there is causing our pain. That we are a victim. Now, it could be a government. It could be a religion. It could be an institution like marriage. You know, we can blame ideas as well as people. She'll talk you deaf, dumb, and blind. Getting laid off was a real slap in the face. The way he looks at me makes my skin crawl. You know, what about allergies? We'll talk about Louise Hay and allergies in just a moment. I'm itching to get out of this house. Betraying my confidence was a stab in the back. What do you want? Blood? Now, you might have said some of this, or you might have had your parents say some of this, or your wife or child. I mean, these things get to you. So, other metaphysicians have taught in the same way. Of course, the Course is not the only truth. It's one very good look into truth. But one of my favorite books is Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Richard Bach, classic. Very great analogy. It's a little book. You can read it in a couple hours. It's powerful. Richard Bach says, your body is your thoughts in a form you can see. So you can say, well, this is my body and it's real, and in a certain dimension it is. But really, more than seeing your body, you are seeing your thoughts about your body. And so one of the ways we can determine what we're thinking is to notice what we're seeing. You work backwards. Whatever's happening out there first happened in here. So in this case, the body becomes a communication device showing us what we're thinking. Now, the world would have you think it's the opposite. Your body causes your thoughts. but it's really your thoughts that cause your body. We've said many times during this series that the world is inside out. If you want to know what's true, pretty much take pretty much whatever you've been told is real and reverse it, and then you'll get what it really is. So we've been taught that the outer world causes the inner, but the truth is that the inner world causes the outer. Now, I mentioned Louise Hay. Some of you are already into Louise Hay. Louise Hay was a wonderful pioneer of consciousness and the relationship between mind and emotion and body, especially physical symptoms. She had a classic book, You Can Heal Your Life. She got her start many years ago in the 80s when she helped mostly men with AIDS. And she made the relationship between AIDS and self-esteem, or lack of self-esteem. And she really helped lots of guys through a very difficult period. God bless her. She's passed on a couple of years now, but you probably are quite aware of her. And she has several books. I have someone right here. This is her original, I'll take the stop. There we go. This is her original book, a little pamphlet from the 1980s, You Can Heal Your Body. This is a larger version, a more expanded version of Heal Your Body. And of course, she has the larger book, You Can Heal Your Life. And in this book, Louise takes lots of different diseases and hooks them up with the mental and emotional correlation that started them and keeps them in force. And then, of course, she goes on to give affirmations about how you can offset them. So let's practice a little bit ourselves now, because I want to make these seminars personal, not just theory. So there was a book many years ago, I think her name was Alice Steadman, Steadman, something like that. And she wrote a book called Who's the Matter with You? Kind of a classic metaphysical text. And she does the same thing. She takes what's upsetting you and traces it to who you're blaming them for. So we're going to do a little exercise now. So this is in my book, A Course in Miracles Made Easy. So would you please think with me now? If you want to take a pen and write it down, that's just fine. So think of some pain or illness or problem you have. Asthma, heart issues, allergies, digestive issues, urinary tract, elimination, vision, hearing. There's no end of stuff to choose from if you want. So take one or two or three and just notice what's most chronic in your life. If you have something, what bugs you the most. And now I want you to be really, 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 really honest now. See, in order to be healed, you can't whitewash stuff or gloss over stuff. You have to really tell the truth about your beliefs. So who do you think is responsible for this pain or illness you're having? Who do you blame for it? We all do it, more or less. Who do you blame? Be honest now. And I came up with a few examples here. So, and keep thinking about your own as I'm saying this. Backache. I have to work terribly hard to support my family. So my family is the cause of my backache. Now you could say, oh, you're jumping to conclusions. Well, if you work with this stuff, you see that it really is, it really is operating. Headache. The kids were nuts today. My kids gave me a bad headache. Let's say I have arthritis. My husband is keeping me in a box. I can't move. I've actually counseled quite a few people who said something like this. So my husband is the fault that caused my arthritis. Urinary issues. Boy, does my partner piss me off. Or something pisses me off. an ulcer, let's say. Competition in my field could put me out of my business if I don't hustle. So let's go back. So please keep thinking. I'm going to give you a minute in silence to just ponder who's the matter with you. Who do you blame for your pain, illness, or problem? And if you can just identify one hookup like this, you'll get onto the dynamic and you'll see that this works. And you can use it when new issues arise, if they do. Behold me, brother, at your hand I die. And just think for a moment, if this person were never to see you again, or never to see you in pain, would you really still be carrying this problem? Well, maybe because you're vibrating them mentally, but as long as that person is around to see you struggling or suffering or dying, then you win, according to the ego's game. It's a pretty sick game. All the entire ego's game is insane, but we have to deal with it, so let's do the best we can. Once again, if you have any questions or comments, type them in to ACP office, and at the end of the program, we'll go over them. Type them in now or later. Now is better because then we'll have a chance to sort through them. Okay, so we're now going to begin to reverse it. What's the use of describing a problem unless you have an answer to it? So the Course tells us to remember that I have a kingdom I must rule. And your kingdom is your consciousness. It's your body, which is an expression of your consciousness. It is the world you live in, not so much that you must boss the world, but you must rule your perception of the world, because your perception of the world is what's creating the world. The world is your thoughts played out on a screen on a blank screen. So we begin by recognizing that you cannot afford to let thoughts that deplete you or hurt you creep into your kingdom. That's the enemy. And it also says, this is one of my favorite lessons, I could see peace instead of this. I could see peace instead of this. So I love this lesson. So take a moment now and think about something that's upsetting you. It could be an emotional thing or a physical thing, a financial thing. And notice how you're upset. And now say to yourself, I could see peace instead of this. And if for even a moment you tap into a sense of peace, you've gotten the lesson. That victimization and upset is a choice, and peace is a choice. And I love this lesson because it can work at any moment. The moment you get upset, I could see peace instead. I really have a choice? Okay, let me see if I can try and, how would peace feel instead of this? Usually a lot better. So then, I want to offer you an antidote to behold me, brother, at your hand I die. And it's really, behold me, brother, at your hand I live. At your hand I live. So we're going to start with a release ceremony. And you can do this now, or you can copy it down, or just use your own words. Do it in the moment. It'll have even more impact. So what you do is you take somebody who you believe hurt you. And for today's lesson, we'll apply a physical pain. So the person that you think caused your asthma or your heart condition or your whatever, we're going to release them. So pick, and if you're having trouble hooking up somebody between your condition and their source, just pick somebody who bugs you. That'll work just fine. So say this out loud with me, if you would. I now release you, say the person's name, as the source of the pain I have attributed to you. Now think what this means. You're actually connected to them psychically. And in the Hawaiian tradition, they have this phrase called aka chords, AKA. And an aka chord is the Hawaiian spiritual tradition. An aka chord is like a psychic umbilicus, or I like to think of it as taffy, where you're psychically connected to somebody. It's almost like you're roped together. And in some cases, it's a loving rope because you love them so much. But in other cases, it's a painful rope because you're angry at them so much. And so what we're doing now, and don't underestimate this because this can have deep, pervasive effect in your entire life, is we are severing that aka cord, that dark umbilicus, that taffy that keeps you stuck to people you hate or upset with, or at least blame for your illness. Do not underestimate what we're doing now. It's powerful. We go on to say, I accept responsibility for my experience. You didn't do it to me. I did it to myself. Now, you may have done something that was unkind or rude or disrespectful or said nasty words to me. That happens. However, we're not excusing the person, saying no problem, just do this again. We don't condone evil or darkness or hurtful things. We don't just say it's just fine to do that. But we are saying, I now choose to take back the power that I gave you over my happiness. If you said something or did something and I lost my happiness, you did not have the power to take my happiness from me. Only I have the power to give my happiness to you, away to you. So I also like the idea of a fishing line, where you're just reeling in a fishing line. You're saying, I take it back now. Now, I choose peace and healing for myself. And we can parenthetically add, I no longer find more value in blaming you than in releasing you. In my coach training, we talk about the motivational mechanism, which says that everybody's always doing something because they're getting some reward out of it. And if I have been finding some reward in blaming you, I now recognize that it's not a true reward that I value. I would rather have the reward of peace. I could see peace in this. So now I transfer my system of reward from, hey, it feels good to make you wrong, to, wow, it feels good to release you and to be whole unto myself. How cool is that? I now choose peace and healing for myself, my God-given rights as a sovereign soul. Sovereign means I rule my own kingdom, that I am in charge of my experience, that I make my own laws about how I live, and or at least I choose the laws in which I live, and I do not depend on anybody else for my happiness or unhappiness. That's what the Course in Miracles is all about. And so it is. So it is. I hope you've done that with me. It works. It's short, it's brief, it works. And if you want to write it down and use it again when anything comes up, I promise you it'll work every time. Universal principles always work. There's no slippage in the system. Okay, so we want to reverse the theme of your hand, at your hand I live, I die, and we want to replace it with at your hand I live. It's not just enough that we're going to release people, but there's a third step. The first step is you're blaming them. The second step is you're releasing them. And the third step is to reverse the paradigm so you now give them credit for your life. Now, in the big picture, they're not in charge of your life and they don't really make you live. However, this is a really powerful reversal of the belief at your hand I die. You need to do it to change your mind, and of course it's going to help people by validating them. And one of my favorite examples was President Obama. He, upon his re-election in 2012, he sent out a tweet to all of his followers and he said, "This happened because of you. Thank you." And this is the mark of a great leader, a great teacher, a great healer, that great people attribute their success to their colleagues. They don't blame their colleagues for their problems. They attribute their success to them. So this is why if you watch the Academy Awards, people have long lists of thank you for this, thank you for that. That's a mark of mastery. If you see a sports player, a baseball player, or a football player being interviewed, I couldn't have done it without my team. Had the greatest team behind me. And these people are reversing the belief, at your hand I die. They're saying, thank you, at your hand I live. So for homework, you might want to do some validation of people who've helped you live. And in some of my workshops, I actually ask people to stop the program, take your cell phone, walk into the hallway or outside on the street, and call somebody and thank them for helping you live. You think, well, my mother knows I thank her. Well, maybe not. Maybe she would like to hear it. Or maybe your children, they know I love them, but maybe you need to tell them. You know, maybe you need to thank your coworkers and your employees and your peers. I mean, what do you have to lose? And I knew a guy who was an AA. He's a wonderful man, and he every day, as part of his healing program, he would call 3 people and thank them. That was the spiritual practice. Thank them for something they did that helped him. So when you thank somebody, you're saying, in essence, at your hand I live. And of course, when you give somebody else credit for your life, that appreciation and life force has to flow through you, so you get healed. So you get healed. Good stuff, isn't it? So we have made the journey from at your hand I die to at your hand I live. It's really the only journey there is. It's the journey from fear to love. It's the journey from victimization to empowerment. It's the journey from loss to wholeness. I mean, it's it's a really cool journey. So we're going to take some questions in just a moment, and then at the end, I'm going to give you a nice, powerful meditation. So we'll do the questions a little earlier, and we're going to leave time at the end for a great meditation. So we're going to call my friend Nishank, who is once again tuning in from Mumbai, India. And let's see, Nishank, are you there?
Yes, Alan. Hi, good morning. Good
Thank
morning
you very
from me to
much.
everyone.
Good to hear from you. Nishank is on. What time did you start here? 5 a.m. or something like that, your time?
5:30. Yeah,
Thank you very much.
you're welcome. I love doing this. So the first question is from Natasha. She says, I am nearsighted and have found that my eyes have gotten better as I've gotten older, despite eye doctors saying that it worsens with age. I'm considering LASIK, I think, which is a laser surgery to remove the power. But from today's session, if I could, I'm curious to know if I could be completely cured without the use of LASIK.
Of course you can, and lots of people do. I actually had LASIK myself many years ago, so I'm a big fan of it. So the point is not so much how you get healed, but the point is that you do get healed. I was nearsighted for many years, and I had this surgery, and it corrected it for the most part. I still wear reading glasses, but for the most part, I see pretty well. So my friend Jacob Lieberman, who's an optometrist, he wrote a book called Take Off Your Glasses and See. I also know a woman who she had vision problems, and she went to a healer, and the healer says, you should see the world as perfect. And so what she did was she began, instead of seeing errors and imperfections and inaccuracies and inadequacies, she started to see, I see this perfect, I see my body perfect, I see my friends perfect, I see my world perfect. And she began to see through the eyes of perfection, and her vision totally cleared. So it's absolutely possible for you to heal your eyes without LASIK. It's possible to heal your eyes through LASIK. LASIK could be one manifestation through which your healings come. God heals through doctors. That's just one avenue through which healing comes. So the important thing, Natasha, is to do your inner homework. And not, because if you go to a doctor and you're still, and they do some kind of treatment, and you're still harboring the belief system that caused the symptom, it's either going to return or something else will pop up. So I think you're on the right track by doing your homework, seeing things as perfect. Nearsighted means you see only what's closer to you, but if you look at the big picture and the far perspective, so then you're no longer nearsighted. So keep practicing that, and you can do LASIK if you want. You cannot do LASIK if you don't want, but the inner homework will eventually manifest as the outer demonstration. Okay, next.
Thank you, Alan. Gregory asks, what is it in us that discerns positively as one human, where another may see as ugly? So, what he means is spirit helps us on our path, but what is it in us that is creative, yet others will dislike the results?
Well, that's what the Course in Miracles calls the ego. And Nishank, if I'm not answering the question, you can tell me. I didn't read it. But the Course in Miracles says that the ego is the part of our mind that sees through a glass darkly, and it sees lack and loss and suffering and death. It's a faulty form of it's an erroneous way of seeing and thinking. And when you're in ego, when you're seeing through the filters of ego, everything takes on the coloring of the ego, which is usually dark. And so what the Course in Miracles wants us to do is to help us recognize that there are different kinds of perceptions that we can use. And one is to putting on the eyeglasses of the ego, And another one is to put on the eyeglasses of spirit. And it says that when you see through ego's eyes, nothing works. And when you see through spirit's eyes, everything works. So it's the whole Course in Miracles, all 365 lessons are about shifting our perception so we move from seeing the ego's world only and we see the spirit's world only. More and more and more and more. Is that, Dishank, do you think that gets at it?
Yes, I think that's pretty much it. Thanks for explaining it in that way, Alan.
Okay.
Well, these are the two questions for today. I think we have one more coming in. So, anyway, uh, Alan, one line I would like to highlight from this chapter, which I really, really love, is you mentioned your wellness is God's factory installed gift to you,
Hmm.
your inalienable birthright. You've used words so specifically. And, when you're using gadgets and sometimes they hang or sometimes, something goes wrong, what we do is restart them or reinstall them at factory settings.
Hmm.
So, could you highlight some ways to reset to factory settings? That would be
Yeah,
lovely for everyone.
great. That's beautifully stated. Thank you. The good news is that who we are as God created us is still there. And that our true self, our spiritual self, never went anywhere. It's still here. We just covered it with a bunch of muck. And I actually heard about a healing technique in which when a child was born, the parents save the placenta and they freeze it. And then if at a later age the child gets ill, they take some of the blood or nutrients from the placenta and they infuse it back into the child, which is kind of a physical reset. So you don't have to go very far for a reset. Uh, Techniques like meditation and prayer and yoga and being in nature and eating foods in harmony with your body, things like music and creative arts, anything you do that raises your vibration, and all those techniques do, will get you back into alignment with spirit. Remember, spirit's always there, but you can't get out of alignment with it. Someone said, if you feel distant from God, who moved? Well, God is still there, but we moved in consciousness. So, if you and I would have a personal coaching session, I would ask you, what do you personally know how to do that gives you a reset? Maybe it's to take a nap. Maybe it's to play with your doggy. I like to write. I do my creative writing. So each of us has some thread, like when in the old days, when a deep sea diver would go down, they would have an oxygen tube that connected them to the surface. Well, we all have an oxygen tube that connects us to spirit. So the question is, what do you know how to do personally that lines you back up again? And then you just do it. And when you do it, you wonder why you ever left. It's a funny question, isn't it? Okay. Hope that answers it.
Yes, Alan, thank you so much. I think it's so important in everyday lives on a daily basis to do this reset. So thanks for asking. I think we are all uh, so I think Gregory just wants to ask this one last thing, and I think we can take that up. Is the ego sometimes a positive focus for us to tell the universe what we want to create as well?
It's a good question. I would say that the ego is a positive asset in that it helps us focus on what we need to be doing in the physical world so we can accomplish it. So the ego is a sense of self, and it's a sense of small self, but you came into the world for a reason, and you have a body for a reason. So The ego is the one that says, okay, you're driving, so you better stay on the proper side of the road. If you didn't have an ego, you'd just drive anywhere and it would be chaos. But the ego says, okay, I'm in this world. I came here for a reason. I have a body. I want to be accomplishing something. So let me stick with my purpose and let me focus on what I'm doing here so I can achieve it within the context of duality and living in this world. And I will further my earthly journey, wherever that's taking me. And so I have an identity, I have a focus here. Let me stick with that, so I'm not just some amorphous blob and I don't have any purpose here. So good question, Gregory. The answer is yes. Just be careful that you're focusing it on goals that lift you rather than goals that muck you. Because the ego can take you, can take you to where you want to go or can take you where you don't really want to go. So if you're going to use your ego to focus, use it to take you to a happier place instead of a darker place.
Thank you, Alan. Do we have time for one more question?
Sure, thank you.
So Natasha asks, can we use these concepts to heal others? So her husband worked with a functional nutritionist to heal energy issues, which worked for a while, but he still finds he struggles with energy.
Yes. So you don't really have the power to heal anybody else because each of us has to choose healing for ourselves. So your husband is on a healing journey regarding his energy, and he needs to look within him to see where he's stuck. You might just ask him who he's blaming for his energy depletion. Hopefully it's not you. Maybe it is. But regardless of what his answer is, there's somebody, according to this particular lesson, that he thinks some external force that he believes is responsible for his illness. And if he can dissociate from that external force as cause, then he has a really good chance to do the work to change his life. Now, while you can't heal him, you can certainly set up an optimum environment for him to heal himself. So by you seeing him whole, and by you seeing him as not as the victim of some external circumstance, by you loving and accepting him as he is, by you seeing his spiritual self even more than his physical self, by you not agreeing that there's something really wrong with him, you understand how all these gifts to him raise your vibrations. So he now, when he's with you, is in an optimal vibration for him to choose healing for himself. A real healer is a tuning fork. So you go to a Jesus or a John of God or a Bruno Groening or somebody who's a great healer. They're like, they're at a healing vibration. And when you're in their presence, they invite you to that healing vibration. And if you choose to align with it and agree with it, then you get healed. So yes, you can. He can't heal himself. Only he can heal himself, but you can certainly support him by establishing a healing energy from him, from you, and around him.
Well, thank you, Alan. I think that really gives a lot of clarity in our role of helping others heal. Thank you very much. Well, I think we are pretty much ready for your meditation.
Thank you. Now, before we go on, I want to thank Nishank. Nishank is in India, and with two of his dear peers, Deval and Anil, they're really a force to be reckoned with in India. They're starting lots of Course in Miracles groups and trainings and retreats. And so thank you very much for being a force for the Course in India, Nishank. I appreciate it.
Thanks for guiding us and being our teacher, Alan.
Okay. So I want to begin our meditation with this quote from the Course. We have some time to do it. Good. Nothing external to your mind can hurt or injure you in any way. There is no cause beyond yourself that can reach down and bring oppression. No one but yourself affects you. There is nothing in the world that has the power to make you ill or sad or weak or frail. But it is you who have the power to dominate all things you see by merely recognizing what you are. And with that, I'll invite you to close your eyes if you wish to. Let's take a deep breath. And I like that question about the reset. So I invite you now to reset, to return in thought to your original innocence. And see yourself now as a whole, powerful being of light. See yourself not as a body or a gender or an age, but as an eternal spirit. I am whole. I am innocent. I am fresh. I am free. So see yourself now not as a body, but as a being of light. And you know how the sun shines from inside out and extends rays out into the universe. The sun is not really needful of anything outside itself. It is self-sourcing. And so I suggest now that you are self-sourcing, that nothing in the outside world can get into your consciousness, can hurt you. I'll say it for me, for you as well. Nothing out there can get in without me letting it in. At this moment, I release everyone and everything that I believe took away my health or my happiness. No longer do I include them as factors in my well-being. And if any names or faces come to you, just, I see you, I love you, I release you. Thank you. Ho'oponopono. Thank you, I love you, forgive me, I release you. And just find yourself getting lighter and lighter and lighter, freer and freer. And suddenly the source of your power is within. That I am connected to the source of all creation, the God that created the heavens and the earth, created me and imbued me with the power of my mind. And I now use that power to create good and healing and well-being. I claim wellness for myself. At your hand I live. At the hand of my brothers and sisters, at the hand of my true self, at the hand of God. Wow. I don't have to do this all myself. I have a source of good planted deep inside me that never leaves me. It is me. It is my true essence. And from this source, I derive my life and I give life. Thank you, God. Thank you for my life. Thank you for the gifts of the beautiful people and animals and things around me that bring me life. Thank you for this day, for the sun, for the food, for my friends. So many channels through which life comes to me. And so many channels through which I return life to the world. What a blessed experience. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's take one more deep breath together. As you feel ready, open your eyes. Come back to our community. Thank you so much for joining me today. I love doing this. It's a blessing to me, and I hope it's a blessing to you. The more we talk about truth, the more we remember it. The more we honor the Course in Miracles, the more miracles we create. Thank you, Nishank. Thank you, Dee, who is here with me. Thank you, all of you, for listening and participating live or to the recording. I love you. I bless you. We'll see you next month. At your hand, I live.